Welcome to the Great Man Within podcast. Every episode designed to help you discover and live the great man within you. On my bookshelf, I have a lot of bookshelves actually. On one particular bookshelf, I have a stack of 9 books that are the most influential books of my life. And when I walk through my apartment, I regularly stop and just stare at the titles, and every once in a while, I'll reflect upon the learnings and the teachings that I've received from those books. And sometimes I will pull the book off the bookshelf and flip through and read. And tonight, it's Friday night as I'm recording this, as I was walking by, I took a stop and a stare at the bookshelf. And there was one book that really seemed to call out to me that you've heard me reference before on the show, but haven't picked up in quite a while. And it's Viktor Frankl's A Man's Search for Meaning. Now, if you don't know about Viktor Frankl, he was a Holocaust survivor, spent 3 years in various concentration camps, including Auschwitz. I think most, if not all, of his family was stripped from him and did not survive the concentration camps. And his timeless classic about a man's search for meaning is basically a tale of how in any given situation, especially one as hopeless as the environment that he was living in, where everything was taken from him, his loved ones, his possessions, his freedoms, most of his humanity was taken from him, but he survived because there was something inside of him that no one could ever take from him. And given the period of time that we're in right now, where we feel like things are being taken from us, where we are afraid for a variety of reasons. Many of us have experienced loss already. Some of us more than others. People have lost their jobs. People have lost loved ones, lost connections, lost opportunities, lost businesses. There's a lot of loss that's happening right now at various degrees. And in times like these, I like to go to the sources who have lost more than anyone and survived and have lived to tell the tale. And Viktor Frankl has done exactly that. And his story has stood the test of time. I believe The Man's Search for Meaning, the book that he wrote, was either written in the late 40s or early 50s. And during a time like today, it's so powerful. So I pulled out 5 quotes from the book that I found to be particularly powerful right about now to remind to remind myself first and foremost. And then I wanted to share it with each of you because it really helped to ground me and provide perspective, a deeper perspective, a empowering perspective on where we are right now, especially coming from a really credible source, a man who survived concentration camps and who went on not only to survive, but to thrive and created a legacy that has helped millions of people since through his works and teachings. So the first quote I pulled, this one really will strike. It really should strike a chord for you. He says, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Now, when Frankl wrote these words, he was referring to the situation where he lost his freedoms. He was imprisoned. He was emaciated because he wasn't fed. He was beaten. He watched his fellow Jews suffer and die in front of him. He came to realize that his family had been taken and who knows what happened to them, but they did not survive. So he lost almost everything. And he could not change the external circumstances. And he said that a big part of the difference between the men who lived on and those who didn't, who died in the concentration camps, the difference was this understanding and this coming to this realization of, if I cannot control or change the situation or the conditions around me, I must challenge myself to change myself internally. And this is a deep philosophical practice that I know many Buddhists subscribe to, and it was a big part of my meditation practice, was learning how to unhook myself from the external forces of the outside world and to learn how to command my inner state, no matter how bad things no matter how bad things could get or they are currently, there's still an opportunity to find a sense of meaning and inner peace. And Viktor Frankl is certainly a credible source of that. The second quote that I pulled: everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, which is to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Hell yeah. Everything can be taken from a man but one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Man, that stands on its own. I don't even need to say anything else about that. The third quote, this is something that he quoted from Nietzsche, and he says it multiple times throughout the book. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. And it's been a while since I've read Frankl's book cover to cover, but I believe he refers to his why in the concentration camp. His why to live, his will to live, came from the belief and the hope that his wife, that his kids would be on the other side, that he would survive and live to see them again here on this planet Earth. And while that didn't turn out to be the case, the why that existed for him gave him that meaning that allowed him to suffer and survive through an ungodly amount of torment and destruction and pain and daily agony, and finding moments of meaning inside of all of that. He had a why. And that's why Brian and I talk so much about this importance of connecting to what gives you a sense of purpose in life, a deeper sense of meaning. Where does your greatest energy come from? Right? Like when you are of service and feeling bigger than something than yourself, there's like a why that exists. A part of my why of living in this moment is looking back a year from now. 365 days from now, I want to look back on this moment right now and be proud of how I showed up on a daily basis for the people that are looking to me for support and guidance. That's a big part of my why. I know the men in my mastermind they have whys of being the father that the family can look to for making tough decisions, to protect them, to have a steady hand in a time where there's a lot of emotions in the house right now. Other men their why is to make sure that their business survives and that the people that work for them and who have families that depend on that income have a home and a space. And so their why is to show up the best version of themselves so that can continue. Those who have a why to live can bear with almost any how. And it's really important, it's essential right now to reconnect on a daily basis right now, the why for we're here, for why we're going through what we're going through, to show up the best version of ourselves. Fourth quote I pulled, and there's just this and the fifth one, there's only two more. In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. This one's deep. In some ways, suffering ceases to be suffering at the moment it finds a meaning, such as the meaning of a sacrifice. So what I believe he's saying here is, if we don't know why we are suffering, then it continues to be suffering. We fight it. I want it to stop. I wish it were different. And then the suffering compounds. But when we find a meaning for it in the moment, a meaning that matters to us, then it ceases to be suffering. I know I'm in a privileged position right now where even though a big part of my business finances are turned off, I have enough savings to take care of me for a while. That's not the same case for everyone else. And I recognize that, and I And I empathize, and my heart goes out to people who are who have less stable footing to stand on right now. But as I sat with my own suffering of loss, of canceling trips, of saying goodbye to certain clients and stages that I really wanted to speak on, that suffering ceased as soon as I saw the opportunity for me to disconnect from the fear, the grip that finance and money has had on me for deep parts of my life, not having enough. And actually recognizing this was an opportunity for me, a training ground for me to learn how to create and serve from a place of abundance, recognizing I have value to provide right now that can give back to others that may not come back to me in the form of, financial reward, financial abundance, but I can damn sure tell you that over these past few days of stepping up my communication, the amount of love and support that I have received, the emails that you all have sent me from listeners that I had no idea had been listening because you haven't reached out yet. Maybe I haven't offered that invitation for you to reach out to me, but some of you have reached out saying that you've been listening for months and the podcasts have been life-changing. And I'm fully starting to understand the impact of what we're doing here. And it's like the abundance that I'm receiving in that respect is overwhelmingly beautiful. And so the suffering that I thought was the reasons why I was suffering, once those gave way to a deeper sense of meaning for this moment, it ceased to be suffering. And so I will carry this quote forward and look to the other areas right now or in the future where maybe I feel like I'm suffering for no reason, but when I can find a meaning, maybe this is teaching me something. Maybe there's growth on the other side of this. Maybe this is helping me to sharpen a skill. Maybe this is allowing me to go deeper into these pockets of myself that I have yet to explore. Those are all sources of meaning that really short circuit that trajectory of suffering. So I love this quote from Frankl. So here's the fifth and final one. It is not freedom from conditions, but it is freedom to take a stand toward the conditions. It is not freedom from conditions, but it is freedom to take a stand toward the conditions. And what he's saying here, at least in my interpretation, is conditions will always be changing. We will never have freedom from conditions. We live on a planet. We are interdependent. Conditions will always be changing, and they will always they will continue to surprise us. They will continue to disappoint us. They will continue to delight us, but they will always be changing. So it's not really freedom to have freedom from conditions because that'll never be possible. But it is freedom. We have the freedom to take a stand toward the conditions. And as I look at the conditions that exist right now in this world where there's fear, where there's pain, where there's disease, where there's a virus, there's illness, in some cases there's scarcity and shortages, I can take a stand. I can choose. I have the freedom to choose how I show up in these conditions. Total freedom, 100% freedom to choose how I show up in response to these conditions. And it makes me think of when I was practicing Buddhism for a period of time. For about 18 months, I practiced Buddhism fairly intently. And it was a form of Buddhism called Nichiren Buddhism. And they had these 10 worlds of experience. The lowest world number 1 was hell, where there's no hope. World number 10 is enlightenment, right? And everything in between is like, an escalation, like a leveling up of those scales. And what was fascinating to me was world number 7 in the context of Nichiren Buddhism was what they called heaven or nirvana. And I was like, how is that only level 7? Because in my upbringing, as a Catholic, heaven was the end state. And the way that they described heaven or nirvana was when all of the external conditions of the world are meeting your desires, when everything is going right. in this external world, and the external conditions are perfect, which they never are, but like, there have been times in your life where things have like pretty much been dialed in. Right? Maybe like your love life is rocking, you feel good about yourself, like there's green lights on the highway, there's no traffic, money's coming in, your favorite song came on the radio, your coffee tastes delicious, like all the external conditions are perfect. That's nirvana. But that's a temporary state because that will change. And then we feel a sense of loss and grippiness, right? And then there's pain that results from that, which is why they put that only at the seventh state and the seventh world. The 10th world, which is enlightenment, is a sense of peace, no matter what the external conditions are. And so I love what Viktor Frankl says here. It's not freedom from conditions. It is the freedom to take a stand towards them. And the freedom that I have, that I'm going to be evoking right now, is to show up the best version of myself for each of you and to support you in the way that I know best how. So that's going to be it for today, fellas. And here's what I would encourage you to do. If these podcasts, or if this particular episode is useful to you and you know a man who would benefit from hearing this, then send it to him. Tag him in it. Or post it to your social media on Instagram and tag me in it. And I'll share you and your story. I'll get to know who you guys are. Like I said before, I'm like really blown away by how many of our listeners have had their lives changed. And I'm just starting to hear about their stories. So come on doinnerwork.com and reach out to me and send me your email. And let me know what's going on in your life. Brian and I were just talking before I recorded this, and he said that he's hearing from some listeners too. And he was like, dude, I had no idea the impact that we were having to this extent. There's plenty of men who've come to us over the past few months and years, or the past year through this. But it seems like the more of you are coming out of the woodwork. So make yourself known. And for the women who listen here too, we know that there are many of you, I think maybe half of our listeners are also women. Let me know why you're listening and what you're getting out of this. This is your chance to engage, because I'm here and have an opportunity to sit down and spend some more time with you during these times. So that's it. Until tomorrow, keep on living the great man within you.